The Man Next to You. Original stories of ordinary people in extraordinary hours, the ones history forgets to name. Season 1, The 100 Hours. Episode 4, Beans and Bullets. Specialist Hector Tovar drove a fuel truck, and the fuel truck was, by a wide margin, the most dangerous place to be in the entire war, and almost nobody understood that except the men who drove them. His truck was a tanker, 5,000 gallons of diesel rolling on wheels, a bomb the size of a house, and his job for the 100 hours was to chase the advance and keep it fed. Because here was the thing that the maps and the news and the generals all knew and the public never thought about. The tanks that were racing north burned fuel at a rate that beggared belief. An Abrams tank drank a couple of gallons just sitting still with the engine running, and far more on the move, and there were thousands of them. And the moment they ran dry, they were just expensive steel boxes sitting in the desert. The whole magnificent charge, the 100-hour blitz across the desert, ran on what Tovar and men like him could drag forward through the dust. An army, the old saying went, travels on its stomach. This one traveled on diesel, and Tovar carried its stomach behind his cab in a thin aluminum skin that a single tracer round would turn into a fireball. You ever think about what we're sitting on? His assistant driver, a kid named Pruitt, no relation to the medic, a different spelling even, just one of those things, asked him on the first morning. Like, if something hits us, don't, Tovar said. Don't think about it. I mean it. You think about it, you'll drive stupid. You think about the road and the truck in front of you, and you do not think about what's in the tank. He'd been driving trucks for the Army for 9 years and trucks for his uncle's company before that, since he was 16. And he knew the one true thing about driving something dangerous, which was that fear made you worse at it. The fuel's just cargo. Treat it like you're hauling milk. The day you start treating it like a volume is the day you wreck. It was a lie, of course, or at least a thing you told yourself on purpose. It was not milk. But the lie was load-bearing, and Tovar had learned that some lies you tell yourself are the only way to do a necessary thing. And the trick is knowing which lies those are. The convoy moved north in the choking dust, and the dust was its own enemy, worse in its way than anyone shooting at them. You couldn't see. That was the thing nobody warned you about. The hundreds of vehicles ahead churned the desert into a brown fog that hung in the air, and Tovar drove for hours staring at the faint red smear of the taillights of the truck in front of him. His whole world reduced to that. Don't lose the truck in front. Don't lose the truck in front. Because if you lost it, you were alone in a trackless, brown void with 5,000 gallons of diesel and no idea where the war was. Trucks got lost. Trucks wandered off into the desert and into enemy territory because a driver lost the taillights for 30 seconds in the dust. Tovar did not lose the taillights. For 100 hours on almost no sleep, he did not lose the taillights. Keep talking to me, Pruitt, he said through the long night. I gotta stay awake. Tell me about home. And the kid talked, and Tovar drove, his eyes burning, his hands locked on the wheel, the great dangerous tank of fuel swaying behind him. And somewhere far ahead, the tanks he would never see were running on the fuel he'd brought them yesterday, and would stop tomorrow without the fuel he was bringing them now. They caught up to the war in pieces. You'd come up out of the dust into a pocket of clarity, and there it would be. A refueling point. Tanks pulled into a circle like wagons. Crews waving the fuel trucks in frantically, because a tank unit that's low on fuel is a unit holding its breath. Tovar would pull his tanker in, and they'd run the hoses, and the precious diesel would flow, and the tankers, the men, the tank crewmen, would look at him while they topped off, and there was always this moment, this look, where a 19-year-old tank gunner would realize, looking at Tovar's thin-skinned truck, what it was that Tovar had driven through the dust to get to him. You drove that up here? One of them said, a kid black with grime, staring at the tanker. Through all that? That's a gas can with a steering wheel. It's milk, Tovar said. I'm just the milkman. And he winked, and the kid laughed, the slightly hysterical laugh of someone who's been scared a long time. And the fuel kept flowing. and in 20 minutes the tank unit had its breath back and could keep running north, and Tovar climbed back in his gas can with a steering wheel and went back into the dust for more. The worst moment came on the third day. A call came over the radio. A unit ahead, stalled, critical on fuel, stuck in a place that wasn't secure. The kind of call where the fuel had to come forward through ground that nobody had cleared, where the dust might hide anything. The convoy commander asked for volunteers because you didn't order men to drive fuel trucks into uncleared ground. Even the army had limits to what it would simply command. Tovar keyed his radio. "I'll take it forward." Pruitt looked up to him. "We don't have to," he said. "Volunteers. They're out of gas, man. Up there, stuck, sitting still in bad ground with empty tanks." Tovar was already turning the truck. "You know what a tank is with no fuel? It's a coffin that costs $5 million. Those guys are sitting in coffins right now waiting on us. We don't leave them sitting." He glanced at the kid. "You can get out. I mean it. You can wait here, no shame. I'll take it up alone." Pruitt was quiet a second. Then he settled back in his seat and put his hands on the dash. "Just drive, man. Don't lose whatever's in front of you." "There's nothing in front of us now," Tovar said. "We're the front." And he drove the bomb forward into the uncleared dust, toward the men sitting in their coffins, because somebody had to bring them their breath. He found them. He always found them. He came up through the dust, and there they were, the stalled vehicles, and the relief on the crew's faces when they saw the tanker roll in was a thing Tovar would never forget and never be able to describe to anybody back home. They refueled under a sky that wasn't safe, fast, everybody working, and a young lieutenant came over to Tovar while the hoses ran, and the lieutenant didn't say anything official. He just gripped Tovar's shoulder, hard, and looked at him. And Tovar nodded, and that was the whole conversation. There wasn't anything to say. The lieutenant had been sitting in the dust with dead tanks and a sky full of unknowns, and a man had driven a 5,000-gallon bomb through that same sky to bring him back to life. And there were no words for that exchange, so they didn't use any. "You're good," Tovar said when the tanks were full. Go win it. We'll be behind you with more." And the unit roared back to life and moved out north, and Tovar turned his empty truck around to go back for another load. And that was the whole job, the endless cycle of it. Fill up, drive forward through the dust, find the men sitting in their coffins, give them their breath, turn around, do it again. For 100 hours. Near the end, exhausted past anything he'd ever known, running on coffee and the strange clarity that comes after enough sleeplessness, Tovar said something to Pruitt that he'd never said out loud before. "My uncle used to say nobody waves at the delivery truck." They were grinding back south through the dust for another load, the war winding down somewhere ahead. "You know, you bring people everything they need, the thing they can't live without, and you're invisible. Nobody thinks about where it came from. The tanks get the glory, the pilots and that's fine, that's right. They're the ones doing the fighting, but none of it rolls a single mile without the fuel, and nobody ever thinks about the fuel or the guy who drove it up through the dust." "I think about it," Pruitt said. "I'll think about it the rest of my life." "Yeah, well," Tovar almost smiled, his face cracking in the grime. "You're in the truck. You don't count. You're as invisible as me." And they both laughed, the tired laugh, and kept driving. Two invisible men hauling the invisible thing that the whole visible war ran on, taking care of men they'd never see, who'd never know their names, who were racing north right now on the breath these two had brought them through the dust. When the ceasefire came, Tovar was asleep in the cab, finally, head back, mouth open, and Pruitt didn't wake him. He just let the older man sleep and sat there in the sudden quiet of a war that had stopped, and looked out at the desert, at the hundreds of vehicles stilled at last, all of them full of fuel that men like the two of them had dragged forward through 4 days of dust and fear. When Tovar woke, the kid was still sitting there, watching over him. "It's over," Pruitt said. "Ceasefire came down an hour ago. I let you sleep." Tovar sat up, rubbed his face, looked out at the still desert. We get 'em all topped off before it stopped. Everyone, whole task force, full tanks. Tovar nodded slowly. Then we did our job. He reached over and gripped the kid's shoulder, the way the lieutenant had gripped his. You took care of me back there. Let me sleep when I needed it. That counts. That's the whole thing, you know that? That's the entire war, right there, somebody making sure the man next to him keeps going. He started the truck. Come on, they're gonna need fuel to get everybody home too. Nobody waves at the delivery truck, but we'll know. And the gas can with a steering wheel rolled forward one more time, carrying its dangerous, invisible, absolutely necessary cargo, driven by a man nobody would ever thank, who had decided a long time ago that the not being thanked was all right, as long as the man next to him kept going. You've been listening to The Man Next to You. These people are fictional. What they carried was not. If this story stayed with you, leave it where someone else might find it, and come back next week for the next one. Until then, take care of the man next to you.